After 11 years at the helm of Alexandra Rose, our CEO Jonathan is moving on to a new role at Pesticide Action Network. But we couldn't let him leave without asking him for some pearls of wisdom. So grab a seat and join us for Jonathan's Diary of a Charity CEO.
I mean, it's just a story, right? It's a real story. It's a random meeting with a person from America called Gus Schumacher, who was an amazing character, a family farmer, a politician, a United Nations FAO global superstar, and a call from somebody who introduced me to him, and a seed of an idea from the United States. That really drew me to the concept. And then I had the very good fortune after that early conversation to be introduced to Alexandra Rose Charity, who were looking for a new mission, right? So it was basically 2 weeks between the two. The conversation with this brilliant guy, Gus Schumacher from the United States, and a phone call from Alexandra Rose Charity saying, we want a new mission and we think we'd like to do some work around improving access to healthy food, tackling food poverty, and tackling dietary inequalities. And that's how it all started, really. I've been working in food access for, well, close on 23 years now. And for me, it's the best thing I'd ever come across. It was the best idea. It was the best way of doing it. It wasn't about creating any new infrastructure. It was just giving people the means to be able to access that fruit and veg, which is on sale in their communities. They can see it there. It's on the high street, but they can't access it because they can't afford it. And so this just seemed like a no-brainer. I really thought it was going to be the best way to tackle food access and food poverty in the UK, and we tested it, and I still think it is the best way. So yeah, Alexandra Rose Charity, I mean, it's a very old charity, right? It's been around for over 110 years, and it was almost a creature of its history. It had such a long and illustrious history that it was also sort of wedded to maybe an older way of doing third sector work, voluntary sector work. But the great thing was they were open and enthusiastic about doing something new and innovative. Because what they had was a charity actually that 110 years ago had actually started one of the most innovative things in fundraising in the UK by going out on the streets and shaking buckets and raising money by giving away artificial roses. That had never been done before. So they had that sort of innovation in their history, but they were looking for a new idea. There was some resistance. There were some people who didn't think that it could work, or didn't think it was the right idea for Alexandra Rose. But to their credit, they went through the process doing the research behind the idea, developing a really solid business case. And when they ran the pilots, and the evaluation from those first stage pilots was super encouraging, the data was really, really impactful, they realized they had something quite innovative and valuable on their hands that they could drive forward. There was a big risk for the organization at that time. They were no longer doing anything, right? Their whole old model of working had been abandoned, and they had some reserves, but a limited amount of reserves, and they had to use their own money to pump prime this idea to see if it would work. And they took a risk in many ways. They took a risk on the concept. They took a risk on me. I'd never been a chief executive of a charity before, and so I feel like that risk has been fully rewarded, because over the last 11 years we've created something amazing that reaches lives of people in many areas across the UK, but also is starting to have real resonance and influence with policymakers and people who are trying to change the food system in the UK. I feel like the idea is of the moment. I think people are looking for a different way of addressing our food, health, and dietary crises that we're facing in the UK. And we can already see it with more interest from policymakers and central government as well as local governments in the model that we're developing. I mean, I think undoubtedly central government will start to dabble in commissioning fruit and veg on prescription. I think they will start to see that it's something that's worth exploring, and I'm really hopeful that comes out of either the National Food Strategy or the emerging work around the NHS 10-year plan. And I mean, like I said, I've never been a chief executive of a charity before, so it's been 11 years of steep learning curve. I've really enjoyed that. It's been very challenging at times, but the thing that honestly, it's the thing that I learned very early on, and it's become almost my guiding ethos with the charity, is the importance of relationships. Relationships are everything to Alexandra Rose Charity, because we can't do our work without the local partners who deliver the project. We can't do it without the children's centres, without the market traders, but we can't do it without the local authorities, the local funders, the trusts and foundations who fund us, the corporates who fund us, and all of the success of getting those people to engage, getting those people to support our work has all been down, I think, to the quality of the relationships that we build. An open and honest style, a willingness to say when things have worked well, when things haven't worked well, being forthright by letting people know when we've made mistakes, when things haven't gone exactly to plan. And that's always been part of my nature. But when I started doing reports to funders, they would come back to me and go, "Oh, wow, we really appreciate you telling us all the things that haven't gone well as the things that have." And I was like, why? Why would I not tell you what hasn't gone wrong? And it really was an eye-opener to me that sort of openness and honesty really creates rewards for charities like ours. I mean, I've developed a lot in this role, being a new chief executive and then building, it was quite easy in the early days. It was almost very much like project management, which I'd been doing in my previous career, because it was a small organization that only employed 2 people, and we had a project to run, and I was very hands-on in the delivery of that project. But then we started to grow, we started to recruit more people. So actually, I feel like, now that we've got an organization of 12 people and, turnover of well over £1 million a year, I suddenly feel like I actually know how to run an organization. I've learned how to be a chief executive, whatever that means. And I've understood perhaps a little bit more about what leadership is, even though I feel uncomfortable with that word. Leadership doesn't necessarily sit comfortably with me, but I've started to understand at least what my leadership style is and how I work with people, and understanding what works and what doesn't. I think I've become a lot better at listening. I used to just barrel in with my own opinions, and I feel like over time I've really realized the value of listening, of pauses and silence within those conversations that you have to have with people. I used to always rush in to fill silences, and now I don't. I try and sit back. I still rush in quite a bit because I'm a very talkative sort of human being, but I've really feel like I've found that the skills that I've learned in being a CEO, I take into my relationships outside of the work environment as well. I've learned things in the workplace that help me with friendships and relationships and families and things like that. There's a lot that I'm proud of. And I think we've achieved so much in those 11 years. For me, it's just the growth of impact that I really loved seeing. For me, behind us here are boxes and boxes of vouchers, right? Really, each box is a container of cash, because these are, conditional cash transfers to people. And so when I started to realize how much cash we were actually giving to people and putting into people's pockets, that really started to resonate with me. So also behind us is the first £1 millionth voucher. So to celebrate the milestone of hitting 1 million vouchers, we printed this giant golden voucher. We'd given out 1 million vouchers. It took us about 8 years to give out 1 million vouchers. It took us about 18 months to give out the next millionth voucher, and it took us about 12 months after that to give out the 3rd millionth voucher. And so just seeing that scale all the time and hitting those milestones and realizing we've put 3 million, now nearly over £3.5 million back into people's pockets so they can buy fresh fruit and veg from local markets. That's a great feeling, right? That's just giving people who really need some extra money. And I hope they've felt that slight relief of having a bit more money in their pockets to be able to spend on the type of food that them and their families like. Other highlights: winning the BBC Food and Farming Awards for innovation in 2023. That was a total highlight. Meeting people like Dan Saladino and Sheila Dillon and and the rest of the BBC Food and Farming crew, and being acknowledged as a leader in the UK in trying to address some of our food systems problems was a fantastic, rewarding moment. And then I also think launching fruit and veg on prescription in the UK. So right from the beginning of when we started the Rose Vouchers for Fruit and Veg project, I always knew that the children centre model and focusing on early years, critically important time for health and well-being and the development of children's lives, and the important role that nutrition can play in that. But I also knew that the concept of financial incentive for fruit and veg would be really valuable for a whole range of people of different ages and different demographics. And so launching fruit and veg on prescription in 2022 was a big milestone. I'd been trying to get it off the ground for maybe about 6 years before that, and never really found the right partners. And then all of a sudden, two fantastic partners came barreling towards us in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets and London Borough of Lambeth. Both came pretty much within a month of each other saying, we'd like to commission you to do fruit and veg on prescription, and getting those two projects off the ground with incredible local partners. The AT Beacon project in Lambeth, wonderful community-based health organisation, and the Bromley by Bow Centre in Tower Hamlets, just a unique centre with social prescribing at the heart, almost the lead innovators of social prescribing model in the UK. That was just amazing, great partners to work with, an amazing concept and huge impact that we're seeing over time. And it's weird, but for years people really struggled when I tried to do a sort of elevator pitch to them about what we did, and describing Rose Vouchers for Fruit and Veg in the early years model. As soon as we adopted the concept of fruit and veg on prescription, whenever I say that to people, fruit and veg on prescription, suddenly it had a cut through that the project descriptions before didn't have. And I feel like that's been a real benefit for the organisation, but it's also pushed the awareness of our work even further, because I think it's an easier concept for the wider public to understand. I'm really excited to see a digital voucher developed over time. The paper voucher serves us well, and we've got an amazing piece of technology behind it that manages the registration of families, the distribution of the vouchers, and the redemption of the vouchers from market traders. And that piece of technology actually is one of the proudest things also that I feel over the 11 years is we did a big digital transformation project for the charity from about 2016, and that sort of using tech for good approach I think has been you've done that really successfully. But I'm also super excited to see if we can develop a fully digital voucher that doesn't need to be paper-based, that can reduce the need for us to print and to post vouchers out, become more efficient, and become easier for children's centres to use, families to use, and ultimately market traders to use as well. I think Corinne's going to smash it. I've met with her now on a number of occasions. I think she's a really talented individual with a huge passion for the work that ARC does. I think she's going to take it in a new direction. She has a different skill set and a different way of working, perhaps to the way that I do things, but I think that's going to complement the stage of development where we are currently, and that energy, enthusiasm is going to really drive things forward. My advice would be just keep those relationships going, keep working on the relationships, keep building your relationships with the staff team, with our funders, with our local partners, and enjoy it. It's nice to be it's a social organisation, right? That's the magic of ARC, and I think Corinne's a perfect fit for carrying that forward.
Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing your insights from the last 11 years. To follow Alexandra Rose as we enter a new chapter, sign up to our newsletter at alexandrarose.org.uk.